So, what is worldly wisdom? Worldly wisdom is from the world, the heart of man, and reflects the enemy. It is fueled by selfish ambition and envy, is self-focused, and produces disorder, disruption, and pain. He made him who had no sin. He made him who had no sin. That's Jesus, right? Be sin for us. That's a different kind of wisdom than the world has to offer, right? Okay? So that in him, we might become the righteousness of God. That's a different kind of wisdom, isn't it? Let us, as Christ followers, imitate that kind of wisdom. Okay, I have to start with a story because that's what I do lately. I have to start with a story. So, okay, a while back, quite a while back, I was driving up Fleshman, and I'm in the left-hand lane, and a car enters from Clarkston, so he enters, and so we're going up side by side. I look over, and the driver's sitting over there, and he's giving me the inappropriate wave. And I'm like, I don't even know why he's doing this, but he's just, I don't know. Maybe he was saying I was number one. I don't know, but he was giving me the inappropriate wave, and I was like, what do I do? Because I was driving the beater with a heater, so probably wouldn't have made it look much worse than it already did. Do I wave back? Do I slow down and follow him to scare him? What do I do? What would you guys do? What would you do? Okay, how many of you guys would wave back? Raise your hand. Okay. Some salt of the earth right here. How many of you guys would ram him? Nobody's raising their hand. Jack, you want to raise your hand? Not really. How many of you guys would brake and just get behind him and then just follow him just to make him think, ooh, maybe I did that to the wrong person? How many of you guys would do that? Jack, all right. How many of you guys would be angry? How many of you guys would wonder, what's wrong with him? Yeah. Right? I'll tell you what I did. I looked over and I saw it and I'm like, what? What? And I'm like, I should wave back. No, don't wave back. I should slow down and just follow him, like just make it real ominous like. Or maybe I should just let him drive. And he pulled off, he turned off 8th. And I just kept going, and then I turned on to 13th, heading for the church, 13th, and then back down Highland, and then down 9th. And guess what? He was dropping his wife off where my wife worked at the time. And I went on about my day. And this is the second time I've shared this story with you, so it had a significant impact on me. I tell you the story because we come to circumstances in our lives. We come to circumstances every day where we are faced with a choice of how to respond. And there's things that guide us in those responses. And we're going to get to that in a second. But before I do that, I need to tell you guys to turn to James chapter 3 and put your finger on verse 13. James chapter 3, verse 13. As we continue our series through the epistle of James, and we're asking a specific question of this text, and it's this: if the gospel is true, what should we do? And we ask this question because James gives us some very clear instructions about how we live out our faith. Let's face it, we get saved and we still have to live in a broken world. We still have to interact with a broken culture. And so James challenges us on how we would interact with our culture. We can hide from it, isolate ourselves, and only be surrounded by Christian friends so we never have to deal with the inappropriate way. Of course, there's a problem because some of you have to go to work, some of you have to drive to the store, and you're going to encounter the Mr. One Finger somewhere. Or you can become like the world and behave as the world does in the culture, or you can live differently within the culture. And really what James does is gives us instructions on how to live differently within the culture. And as we interact with the culture, there's something we need to guide us in our decision-making process, because left to our own devices, we would probably do things that cause chaos and difficulty. So we need something else to divide us. And that's where James comes to the topic of wisdom. The topic of wisdom. Now, before we dig into this idea of wisdom, I want to give a definition, a Pastor Bill definition of wisdom. This kind of fits the context. There's other scriptures about wisdom that we might be able to add to this definition. But okay, this is what we're saying. This is what we're defining wisdom as or applying wisdom to our lives as, this term wisdom. Okay, this is what it is. Wisdom is what guides us in determining our response to events, situations, opportunities, and circumstances. Okay, so if I'm using wisdom, I'm going to respond to the wave a certain way. Okay, now here's the thing. We're going to get into this more in a second, but James is saying that there is two types of wisdom. There's two sources of wisdom. Okay, so let's just test your wisdom here really quick. And I just want you to think about this. You don't have to tell me the answer, but just think about this, okay? We talked about the first scenario with the guy in the inappropriate wave. But how about this scenario? How would you respond? You're walking by the high school, and you see a couple of boys bullying another boy. What would you do? What would you do? You're at the park with your family. This is kind of a true story. You're at the park with your family and you see an adult abusing their child. What would you do? You were enticed by a close friend to join them in doing something that you know is wrong. What would you do? What would you do? What wisdom would you apply to those circumstances? Those are all tough circumstances, aren't they? Yeah. And there are circumstances where we could respond, killing flies with sledgehammers. I think most of you men here heard some of those, and you thought, I know exactly what I would do. And I'm with you. Yeah. Somebody's wife is calling him out right now. Oh, I shouldn't look at the crowd sometimes. Okay. This morning's text defines two types of wisdom that we should consider when we're faced with these times. Really, types of these we should consider the type of wisdom we want to use in everyday events, everyday activity. So let's take a look at the text and see what James says about wisdom, and then we'll spend some time unpacking it. This is what it says. James chapter 3, starting with verse 13, going on through the end, which is verse 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. You see here, James is comparing, she's kind of flipping back and forth, describing two types of wisdom. And I want to take a look at each type. And the first one I want to talk about this morning is worldly wisdom. Okay, let me kind of give you a little bit of let me describe something for you. I don't even know what I'm doing. Okay, when something is like, you have a term and that has the ly, like easterly. Does that mean you're kind of heading in an eastern direction, right? So easterly or northly, that doesn't really work, but a northerly direction, a westerly direction. So it kind of, sometimes that ly determines direction a little bit. Okay, so if I say heavenly or earthly, what am I describing? Okay, like a worldly wisdom then is moving in the direction of the world. So that's an easy way to kind of determine what this wisdom is it moves in the direction of the world. Let's talk about it though. What is the source of worldly wisdom? Well, the first thing we see here, James says, is such wisdom does not come down from heaven. This wisdom is worldly. It doesn't come down from heaven. So the origin of worldly wisdom is the world. Okay, but James gives three places it's actually from. He doesn't say just the world. He first begins by saying it's earthly. It's from the world. And here's the thing. That means it's not from heaven. It's not from God. Okay? The next thing he says is it's unspiritual. Unspiritual. Another word for unspiritual that scholars often use is they call it sensual, which means it's not the fruit of the Spirit. So if it's unspiritual, it's not the fruit of the Spirit, but it's from man's lower nature or fleshly nature is where this wisdom comes from. Okay, so it's from the earth, and then it goes a little deeper into man's fleshly, we could say, sin nature. But then it also, he goes on to say that it is demonic, and this means that this wisdom leads to decisions and actions that mirror the enemy, or i.e. Satan. Kill. I got an accent this morning. I don't know why. Kill, steal, and destroy. Where does it come from? So here's the thing. This worldly wisdom comes from the world. It's not from God. It's unspiritual. It comes from the flesh, and it mirrors the activity of the enemy. Worldly wisdom is also fueled by bitter envy and selfish ambition. If you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, you are going to function in worldly wisdom when the fuel or the thing that is causing you to do what you do is at its heart bitter envy. I'm jealous. I want to be first and you're first. That's what bitter envy says. Selfish ambition. I want to win, selfish ambition says. I want to not only win, but I want to crush my competition. Right? So we talk about this wisdom. It comes from the world. It's unspiritual. It's demonic. It's fueled by bitter envy and selfish ambition. And it is self-pleasing. focused. For where you have envy and selfish ambition. He says that twice. He says the envy and selfish ambition twice. And one time he calls it bitter envy. The other time he just calls it envy. But either way, it is self-focused. I'm concerned about myself. I want what I want. Okay? And the product of this wisdom is in James says, that where there is worldly wisdom, there you will find disorder and every evil practice. So self-preservation and self-edification are the focus. A selfish, narcissistic person always creates chaos and always hurts others. So, what is worldly wisdom? Worldly wisdom is from the world, the heart of man, and reflects the enemy. It is fueled by selfish ambition and envy, is self-focused, and produces disorder, disruption, and pain. Now, I have to confess, I sometimes spend a fair amount of time on social media. And I tend to watch the news. I see an awful lot of this wisdom. I'm sure you guys are sitting there thinking, okay, Pastor Billy, you're describing this, and then you're bringing this up. And yeah, I see a lot of people responding in worldly wisdom. Eye for an eye, tit for tat. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and I want to be the top dog. That's worldly wisdom. That's worldly wisdom. Here's the good news. James gives us something else. James gives us something else, and that is heavenly wisdom. Heavenly wisdom. Okay, I want you to see this. Okay, heavenly wisdom comes from God. But wisdom that comes from heaven. Heavenly wisdom comes from heaven. It is wisdom from above and from God. And here's the thing. Heavenly wisdom reflects the heart of God. And it is best revealed, and we'll talk about this more in a little bit, but it is best revealed by Jesus when he came and walked among us and died on the cross for us. So heavenly wisdom is from God and is demonstrated by Jesus. And when we walk in heavenly wisdom, then we reflect Jesus. Okay, now it is fueled by, listen to this. What is it fueled by? If worldly wisdom is fueled by envy and selfish ambition, look at what it says about heavenly wisdom. It is done in humility that comes from wisdom. Humility. And he goes on to say, but the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. Pure. I always think about this word pure. What does it mean? Like if my wisdom is pure because I am seeking God and allowing God to guide me in my decision-making process rather than my own heart, my own frustration, my own desire to win, those types of things. What would I be doing if I were seeking God? What would I have? I would be pure in my desire to please God. Oh, that's called faith. Because I'm trusting God to guide me in my decision-making rather than my own understanding. Right? So here we are. We are fueled by humility, purity, and I would say faith is a big factor in fueling our heavenly wisdom. Rather than trying to handle things myself, I turn it over to the Lord. Right? So maybe next time the wave comes, rather than waving back, heal coals on their head by just praying for them and let the Holy Spirit deal with that person. Right? Okay, now, so it's from heaven, fueled by humility and faith, and is others focused. One is self-focused. This is others-focused. Listen to what James continues to say. It is considerate. Considerate others. Not thinking of self, but thinking of others, right? Is submissive. Rather than thinking I'm above you, I submit to your value as well as my own. Rather than thinking that I'm better, I think we're equals under the love of God, right? Okay, and also full of mercy. Full of mercy. Choosing to be merciful rather than vengeful. Tit for tat kind of goes out the window with that. And I rhymed. That's my poem for you this morning. Okay, and then also he goes on to say, and good fruit. Now, when I think of good fruit, I can't help but think of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. It is also impartial. Impartial. Here's the thing. I kind of remember reading something about favoritism a couple of weeks ago in James. Is impartial. Sees the image of God in everyone, even the guy waving at you. Right? And is sincere. Now here's the thing. Sincerity is honesty. I got to tell you something. There are very few things other than someone lying to me that hurt my feelings. Man, being lied to or deceived, doesn't that hurt deeply? Heavenly wisdom is the opposite of that. It's honest. Others focused, considerate, submissive, full of mercy, good fruit, impartial, and honest, and it produces peace. One produces chaos, the other produces peace. Let them show it by their good life, by their deeds. Living the good life with good deeds. Peacemakers who sow in peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. You know, in 1 Corinthians 13, the Apostle Paul lays out the talks about love, and then he says there's no law against that, right? There's no laws against sowing peace. There's no law against good deeds, and there never will be. It's always going to be accepted, and when we do that, it takes the chaos away and leads us in a path of righteousness rather into a path of chaos. So Easter's around the corner, and so I wanted to apply this concept of wisdom to the cross to kind of give us some understanding of perhaps what these two wisdoms look like and how they interacted, because worldly wisdom is not new. I mean, we see new manifestations of it, but it's been around since the beginning. And heavenly wisdom has been around as long as God has been around, but we see it expressed in different ways. And one of the ways we see heavenly wisdom expressed is the cross. I want you to consider the people in the Easter story. I just want to talk about a couple of groups. And the first group I want to talk about are the religious leaders. What wisdom were they functioning on? Was it worldly or was it heavenly? Let's see. They had a little bit of a racket going where they were extorting from God's people. And when Jesus came on the scene, they got very jealous and very angry because Jesus was challenging them, so much so that they decided it would be best to kill him. What wisdom would that be? Worldly wisdom. And then we see Pilate. Pilate's kind of an interesting guy because if you read the dialogue between Jesus and Pilate, Pilate asked Jesus this question: what is truth? Pilate was a pretty introspective guy, and he was wanting to kind of discover what truth is. And it's almost like he was disillusioned by what the world had to offer for truth. But he had the ultimate source of truth and the greatest source of wisdom standing before him, and he missed it because he said to himself, I'm going to do what the religious leaders want me to do today because tomorrow they'll do what I want them to do. What kind of wisdom would that be? Worldly wisdom, self-preservation. And then there's the disciples. What kind of wisdom did they work in? They kind of walked the line a little bit because they had this idea that Jesus would come and deal with all their problems and make their life easier. Right? They wanted Jesus to deal with Rome. That's what they thought the Messiah would do. But then Jesus came and demonstrated to them a greater wisdom. A greater wisdom. I want to read some scriptures to you so you can see this expression. Because when Jesus came, he demonstrated a new type of wisdom. One that chooses mercy and grace. Listen to this. Philippians chapter 2, 6 through start with verse 6. Philippians 2, 6. Who being the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Was that self-focused or others-focused? Rather, he made himself nothing. Humility, right? Taking on the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. You see, that's not worldly wisdom. Worldly wisdom, you don't humble yourself, you win. You might look like you're humbling yourself just enough to get an edge on the enemy, right? But Jesus is like, oh no, I'm going to humble myself. I'm not doing this for myself, I'm doing this for you. I'm paying a price you can't afford to pay it, and I'm going to pay it for you. That is mercy. That is grace. That is love. 2 Corinthians 5:21. Listen to this. This is the God flipping wisdom on its head. Listen to this. He made him who had no sin. He made him who had no sin. That's Jesus, right? Be sin for us. That's a different kind of wisdom than the world has to offer, right? Okay? So that in him we might become the righteousness of God. That's a different kind of wisdom, isn't it? Let us, as Christ followers, imitate that kind of wisdom. Let us be guided by that kind of thought as we trust him and walk in faith. So here's the thing. If the gospel is true, let us live a good life filled with good deeds, thinking of others first, sowing peace and reaping righteousness. Let us live a good life. How many of you guys want a good life? How many of you guys want a life like they show on the reality TV? No, I want a good life. I want a good life. And I know you all do too. And the path of the good life is faith in him, trusting his wisdom over your own. Right? Is it second nature to think of others first? That's an intentional thing, isn't it? Sometimes we got to say, oh, okay, I'm going to let you be first because I don't have to win here. I am going to get out of this store, so if you cut in front of me in line, that's okay because I don't have anywhere to be anyway. I'm just going to go home and watch TV. And thanks be to the Lord for streaming. It's not going to come on at a certain time anymore. Sowing peace. Bringing peace into the situation rather than adding to the chaos and reaping righteousness. I want you to get this. This is kind of interesting thought that I had this week. Okay. I think sometimes we see circumstances, maybe you'll watch a newscast or you'll see something going on, and immediately in your mind, by worldly wisdom, you have the solution, right? Just fix it, right? Okay? And if we just did that, everything would be okay, right? Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that way, because the rest of you guys are masters of heavenly wisdom. But here's the thing. I want you to get this. I just want to give you like something to remind you of how powerful heavenly wisdom is. What year is it? 2026, right? 2026. Why is it 2026? Why is it 26? Let me tell you why it's 2026. Because 2026 years ago, Jesus, our example of heavenly wisdom, reset time. He restarted the clock. And so every day when you look at the date, when you write a check, when you fill out a form, you write 2026 because 2026 years ago, Jesus did something so significant. And he did it based upon heavenly wisdom, not earthly wisdom. And very little earthly wisdom events have fixed anything enough to reset time again. You see, Jesus brought an eternal solution to our problem. You see, we had a problem with death. We were destined to die, and he came to save us. Worldly wisdom brings a temporary solution at best. However, it often furthers the problem or creates more problems. Heavenly wisdom brings permanent fixes. Heavenly wisdom brings eternal solutions, life-giving solutions, peace-filled solutions, mercy-filled solutions. Jesus is our example. That is why we say, I will follow him when he says, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. That's why we follow him. And that's also why we worship Jesus. So let us take a moment and turn our eyes to him as we worship him together. This week, as I was studying wisdoms, the week before I had ordered some chainsaw parts. And they came on Monday. And I took them out of the box, and they were not what the guy said they were. They weren't usable. They were garbage. And so, like every good Christian man, in the name of Jesus, I sent off a message telling him how terrible they were and just really laying it on thick, because that's what worldly wisdom dictates. And then he messages me back, and he was clearly upset, and so then the messages are going back and forth. So much so that I was supposed to be, it was Wednesday. My wife's over there rolling her eyes. Because Wednesday, we were supposed to be going to a doctor's appointment, and instead I was messaging this guy, and it goes back and forth for 2 or 3 days, and he's like, this guy wants to make it right, but he doesn't really have the resources or the ability to make it right. Now, here's the thing. I could have, reported him to eBay, and then they would have taken money out of his account and given it back to me. I could have left a really nasty review and really, gotten my pound of flesh because my selfish ambition needs that. But I happen to be reading James chapter 3, 13 through 18. So I sent him out this really long message. telling him how I was going to give him grace. Because I need it too. It said, I'll keep the parts. You keep the money. And you know, I was walking around just a ball of nerves over that. You cheat me. You know how freeing that was? To just say, it's okay. I'm not hurt by it. So I'm going to give you grace because I need grace too. Maybe you're here this morning and you've got something that's wrong that's in your mind that you need to fix. Somebody who's in your mind, they need to be fixed. Or a situation that you're carrying around a burden of. I want to invite you to do something this morning. I want you to let it go. I want you to forgive. When I say mean forgive, I say expect no payment in return and let it go. Because here's the thing. We're about to celebrate Easter. We're about to celebrate the death of our Savior. And you know what he did? He paid a fine, a penalty we could not pay. And he said, paid in full, you don't have to pay me back. Right? That's heavenly wisdom. And here's the thing. Let me tell you, when you let it go, you know what happens? You don't have to carry it around anymore either. You're free too. You're free too. See, that's the beauty of grace. That's the beauty of mercy. You know what? Some of you are here and you've been hurt. You've been taken advantage of. Let it go. Let it go. So I want you to, as Jack said, hold your hands like this. And I want to do something. The Holy Spirit's not going to let me not do this. So guess what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to pray the serenity prayer over you. You ready? God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, and the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as pathways to peace, taking as he did the sinful world as it is, not as we would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if we surrender to his will, that we may be personally, reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever. In Jesus' name. God bless you guys and have a wonderful week.